During the time that the Hebrew people were getting settled in the Promised Land, God gave them a lot of different leaders. Not only were there the judges, but there were also priests and prophets. One of the priests was a man named Eli. Now, he helped people not just with administration and organization of government, but with understanding God's will for their personal daily lives. But God wasn't speaking in those days to people and in visions the way that God was during the time of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, or even between Moses and Joshua, until the time of Samuel. Samuel was a young man who was living with Eli, kind of an apprentice, studying to follow in his footsteps. And one night, while Samuel was young, the Lord called to him, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel got up immediately, assuming that it was Eli, and said, "Here I am. I heard you calling." Eli looked at him and said, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed." A little while later, again, the Lord called, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel went to Eli's room. "Eli, I know I heard you calling me." "No, child, go back to bed." A third time, God called, "Samuel, Samuel." I mean, Samuel didn't know what to do at this point, so he goes to Eli and says, "Eli, I know I'm hearing you calling me." And Eli stops and thinks, realizes that something big is happening, realizing that this is God speaking. And so he tells Samuel what to do. It's a little while that late, and again the Lord calls, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel sits up and says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And Samuel and God have a whole conversation. God lays out what he's going to have Samuel do, how he's going to become a leader for the people, a leader that's unlike those before, that's not just a priest, not just a prophet, not just a judge, but in some ways all of those things all together. And that's how Samuel came to be a leader among the Hebrew people. Not just a political leader, but also a spiritual leader, and not just a spiritual leader, but a political leader. But the thing is that Samuel ruled for a long, long time. And as he was getting older and his sons weren't exactly the most faithful, the people asked Samuel for a succession plan. They asked him for a king. Samuel, he was troubled by this, that the people would want a king instead of a spiritual leader like him. And as he was praying, God said, "Oh, Samuel, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me." The people wanted a person, wanted someone who would give them easy answers and tell them what to do, who would fight their battles for them, rather than having expectations for them to work and to grow, to be challenged. And so God says, give them what they want. They want a king, let's give them a king, but I want you to share a warning with them about this. And so Samuel warned the people. He said, this is what kings do. Kings draft your sons and take them off to battle to die. He takes all the skilled laborers and puts them to work for himself. He will take your daughters and put them to women's business. He's going to take the best of your harvests, the best of your animals. And one day you're going to come to regret asking for a king. And on that day, God's not going to have any sympathy for you because you have rejected your God. You have wanted to be like everybody else, like every other nation. You wanted to escape responsibility. You didn't want to have to deal with God. You see, the Hebrew people were grass is always greener under a different kind of ruler, a different kind of God, kind of people. They forgot that faithfulness comes with benefits, comes with a life that's lived abundantly, even if it's hard sometimes. But God delivered. God sent Saul to Samuel. Saul was a man from one of the least of the tribes of Benjamin. I think it's part of God's way to kind of mitigate a little bit the power struggles that might come. God had heard the people's cry, and even though God was wounded, God gave them someone who would help them. And Saul did great and wonderful things. He was a great warrior, a great leader in battle. He saved them numerous times from the Philistines. He led them in a nation built. But the people got exactly what God warned them about. After time, the power got to Saul. He got entitled. He was jealous of anybody else who had any kind of power or position. And most importantly, Saul eventually turned from God to whatever felt good to him. For Saul, that involved women. It also involved wealth and even other religions that were more comfortable and less challenging. And so instead of serving God and instead of serving the people, he served himself. And though the people got exactly what God warned them about, and God said that God wouldn't have any sympathy, God still cared. God would not give up on them. And so while all this was happening, while Saul was raging and scheming, God was raising up a new leader, one who would shepherd the people, who would care for the people. And so next time I'll tell you a little bit about David.